Do basic stats actually matter? They do now. There have been a lot of really cool and interesting changes in this update, and I want to dive into those in the next days and weeks. But for today, I want to talk about what I feel like is the most important change in this entire update, and that's stat weights. And we're going to be using Takmir's Palace as an example, just so you can see at in-game how much stat weight really matters compared to everything else, because you can't overpower this dungeon. It's really the ultimate test in your team comp. And I feel like if you design your teams around this level of challenge based around stat weights, then that can also clear previous content. Whereas you probably can clear some earlier content with teams and builds and stats that really won't work when you get to this level of challenge. So now we're going to run through Takmir's Palace Incubus difficulty with the 2-star gear pre-update. So this is how we were running Takmir's Palace up until today when the update came out. We've got the 2-star set on with all the substats rolled into crit rate and crit damage, maximized for the 1-turn kill meta. Clock initiates, and then we have Puppeteer laying down the defense down, and then Bloody Overlord will do his nuking. And if anything stays alive, Merlin will come in and zap it. So we cruise right along. Did this 100,000 times a week, we had it on lock, we had it on farm, right? Didn't ever have to run with a group in there. We could just go in there and tear it down. Doing just fine, plowing through. The weapon that I've got there is the Bloodthirsty Axe. It applies the bleed debuff, which makes everything take 20% more damage. So then the nukes from Bloody Overlord and Merlin would hit harder. And there's the phantom we all love to hate, Alice. She sucks on your team, but is godlike on the enemy team. But at this point, she's just a mob and not a boss, so she's not broken strong. We can still kill it. You see through every different comp of trash in here, we could take it out, not a problem. Because pre-update, it was all about the substats, right? I'm using the lowest level of gear you can get from a dungeon, but I've re-rolled and re-rolled and re-rolled the substats till they are utterly perfect. Where we have godlike stats, all the crit rate coming from the character and the substats, allowing the runes on our phantoms to just be crit damage and damage flat out, magic attack, physical attack, just out the wazoo. Because the raw stats on it didn't matter, right? It's all about whether you can get crit and get the crit rate really high and then have a bunch of crit damage. As you can see, we just utterly destroyed third boss. Now we're moving down toward the last boss. There he is, Pharaoh, who as of the update is becoming its own new phantom. Got the bleed, got the defense down, incoming nuke, and the machine gun from Merlin. He's got a tiny bit of hit left. The clock knocks him out. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, done it 100 times. And now we're going to do the exact same thing. The only difference is we have equipped the T1 set that I've been acquiring over the last several months. Is the Reinforced Obsidian T1 set. We've changed nothing about our lineup, nothing about the runes, just equipped the T1 set, which has a lot higher stats. This again is pre-update. First boss. We're largely going to go in the same order as before. As you can tell, we don't do quite as much damage as we used to because this new T1 set, you can't afford to reroll the substats to perfection as you could on 2-star gear. That's why I already used 2-star gear, because reforging it was so darn cheap. The materials to reforge T1 gear are very hard to come by in very limited sources. So we're still making it through this boss, but it's a lot different of a fight. It took 2 full come-arounds on the turns for that to even happen. It took 2 bloody overload nukes. But, we came through. Now on the second boss. Again, we have made no changes to the team composition or the runes. We only swapped out the gear. You can already see the further we go into the dungeon, the more they're just taking our hits. Because while we have a ton more raw stats, we now have terrible substats, which took away tons of crit rate and crit damage. And so a logical mind would think, hey, I've got infinitely better armor on. I should be doing better. But no. We're getting absolutely decimated. Whereas before, when we used the lowest level armor in the entire game, we were making this place look stupid. Now it's all we can do to survive. Without that crazy high crit rate and crit damage, we're just basically tickling them, regardless of how high our stats are. Going from the worst armor in the game to the best armor in the game. And that is curtains for our team. Womp womp. Now, this is post-update, and we've got our 2-star gear on with all our perfected substats. And now we live in the world of where those stat weights really matter. Raw stats are more important than substats. Again, with no change to the team comp, no change to the runes, we're just in that perfectly rolled 2-star armor. As you can tell, it's already going differently. Right there, going first this time. And the boss looks a bit different. Instead of just the 2, it's now a singular with 2 adds. Small note, I do like the slight changes in graphics and the 3-dimensional aspect of the battles. But as you can see, our formerly perfect gear isn't getting us anywhere. We've done maybe 1/10 of the damage we need to do to beat this boss, and we're almost out of the fight already. See, there we go. Now, we're going to try the same run again. The only difference, once again, is that we have put on our T1 gear. We've changed no runes. We've changed no party makeup. So the turn order is now different. We've gone first instead of them. Now, it's also important to keep in mind some of the skills on Bloody Overlord specifically have changed. But you can see the nuke didn't do much. He works differently now. But you can see we've got the 1 killed. We're doing far better. And all we have changed is our stats. From 2-star gear to the T1 gear. Not perfected whatsoever. Not improved the new skills of our phantoms. It's important to keep in mind, they didn't just make Takmir's Palace Incubus harder. They corrected the weighting of stats throughout the entire game, which is just going to be the most prominent in Takmir's Palace. now your base raw main stats have weighting like they should. While substats are good, they're no longer near the be-all end-all. And as you can see, we fared far better than we did before, but it still ended in defeat. So I want to show you the difference in why that is. The difference is the stats, right? The weighting of the stats and how much your phantoms will inherit. As you see here, I am in my 2-star gear, right? That I rolled to the crit rate just to have all the best substats. If you go to my character page, you'll see the extends tab that in the post update, 40% of base character stats are inherited by all phantoms. Pre-update, that was only 5%. You can see here in my 2-star gear, here are the values that I am passing on to all my phantoms. And now in my T1 gear, the reinforced obsidian mantle, I've selected this set because of the amount of physical defense and magical defense that it has. It's just a stat powerhouse of a set. Go look at my character page. Look at the values now, right? Much different. The biggest of those differences you'll see is the physical defense and the magical defense, which is key in this new realm of inflated stats or stat weights being appropriate as they should have always been. Is that you're able to withstand the hits in some of those dungeons where you no longer have to use the old meta, which was the 1-turn kill combo, where you had an initiator, a debuffer or setup, a primary nuker, and a finisher, because the heftiness of the stats of those bosses and mobs are going to be so high that that's not a feasible option anymore, because things actually are a lot tougher. And in order to survive or have a chance of defeating the dungeon, whether solo or in a group, you're going to have to be able to take those hits. So the defensive changes are a must, and they are huge. And in pairing with that, you'll notice there are a lot of new phantom skill changes that have damages moved from magical or physical attack over to a magical defensive and physical defensive basis for the amount of damage calculated. So that is a nice intentional change, and I do like it a lot. And while our party makeup didn't result in a victory post-update, we haven't changed anything else about the comps. We just switched from the 2-star gear to the T1 gear to show you how much of a difference stat weight makes. But I wanted to, without any other variables, just to show you how much difference those stats really make now. It's not all about the substats. The substats is secondary. Now it's all about, do you have enough raw stats, and is your team comp viable for the situation? So with all that being said, welcome to the new update where stats matter. It's not all about the secondary stats. I'm looking forward to making different team comps and trying to get through this difficulty. And I'm going to try my hand at soloing Takmir's Palace Incubus. Hold my beer. Alright, I'm JTOWN. I will see you in game.